Well, Mediki at the moment enjoying almost an 11-second gap over third-placed Tony Longhurst. In fact, it's precisely 10.97 seconds. And he's around about 15 seconds behind the leader, Jim Richards. So it'll be very interesting to see just exactly what happens here and whether we end up with a BMW 1-2 or whether Andrew can do something about the leader.
Actually, I think the word has come through that they're considering black flagging Longhurst because his jack's hanging down, which I think would be a very disappointing thing for him. I don't believe that it's actually dangerous enough to warrant a black flag.
No, it was apparent about, 4 or 5 laps ago that the thing had begun to sag. What's likely to cause that, Dick? Why would that happen?
Well, obviously they've got their tap closed, which doesn't let any air out, and the air just gets hot inside there and it just builds up, and one of the jacks actually hydraulics itself down. 27 seconds separates the top 3 in overall terms.
Andrew Mediki, we're watching in the Oxo Ford Sierra, and well, it'll be a bit galling, Dick, for you to have to sit here and watch another Sierra still out there circulating on the track and doing so well.
No, actually, it's not a worry because the cars should be up there. Like they're very competitive, and I think that within time they'll even get better.
Notice a fair bit of scraping and graunching down the side of Andrew's car, so he certainly had to earn his keep to get into the position that he has today. The understanding I have from talking to John Craft and Don Smith yesterday is that Andrew will run this car for the remainder of the year, and John Giddings is in the other car, number 34 at the moment, and as a customer will pick up a new car shortly, and of that new car there's another second one coming along as well, which they reckon that they're going to have Andy Rouse running in later in the year in the Endurance Championship. So they've got big plans, the Oxo team. Glenn Seaton's a busy man in car number 15. He's been working his way back up through the field after copping some jostling early on. He is behind his teammate George Fury at the moment, back in 6th position on the road, and we were noting yesterday in qualifying just how hard he works at the wheel, Dick. I said to him, what do you reckon you're getting around the under the bridge like and through the sweeper over the back? Does it feel like you just turned in and it's comfortable? He said, yeah. But then he came in, we had a look at race cam, and the wheel movements are extraordinary. The car's really buffered around on this track.
Well, actually, I think that's pretty indicative of a car that's set up reasonably hard, and I don't think it's any different really for most of the vehicles out there that they actually have to work that hard to keep the thing on the road. It's basically just fine-tuning like one would do on a sailing boat, I should imagine.
Well, Glenn's chasing at the moment. The man that he's chasing and his team leader is this man, Tony Longhurst, car 4, JPS BMW M3. The smaller BMWs were particularly strong here last year as well, the 3 Series, and they seem to have adapted well in the M Series, the M3 Series. There's that jack hanging down front right-hand side. Frank Gardner looking at his watch. I wonder whether he's aware of the situation at the moment in the discussion that's taking place beneath our commentary point regarding a possible black flag.
By the way, Larry Perkins, after contesting the lead for so many laps, has made a pit stop for tyres, so he's dropped fairly well down the list now.
Well, that is a bit of a shake-up, and there's Brad Jones in trouble in the auto colour entry. So the Dulux Starion out of business, car number 16. They've been having some problems getting this car on the pace this weekend, and Brad pulling to the pits. Team now being looked after by George Shepherd, and although they've gone 2 seconds better than they did last year, he's still not on the pace at this stage of the game.
Back with Tony Longhurst, and we've heard nothing more of the report that he might be black flagged. It hasn't happened yet.
One of the things they're running on these JPS cars this weekend for the first time is a newer Pirelli D4 compound, and it's a new series D4 compound that they haven't had before, and they thought, even though was relatively untested, might perhaps suit these conditions better than the D3 that they've been running for a long time, and it would appear as though at this stage they're working quite well. Jim's circulating in about a 17.7, and there's still 17 seconds encompassing the top 3 drivers at the moment.
Well, actually, I think Jim's just driving to win, which is a sensible thing to do. Tony certainly has settled down quite a bit, and he's driving the car nice and straight, although we noticed a puff of smoke out of the left-hand front wheel of his car at that point in time. So we'll just wait and see how Tony fares in the tyres.
Okay, so Tony Longhurst in 3rd place on the track. The top 3 at the moment: Jim Richards, Just over 8 laps remaining in the 6th round of the Shell Ultra Australian Touring Car Championship for race leader Jim Richards, comfortably leading this race from Andrew Medicki and his teammate Tony Longhurst. And the next pair in contention are the Turbo Nissans of George Fury and Glenn Seaton. Not a V8 Commodore in sight at this stage. Larry Perkins was up there early, but has now dropped back after a change for tyres. Gary Scott was up there early, but has dropped back through the field. And Peter Brock, never with the leading division, has also been in for tyres, but at this stage has not made any impact on the race. And it's all Jim Richards at the moment, driving superbly, and he knows that all he's got to do is conserve, drive a steady race, hang on to those tyres, and he's all but got this one. Andrew Medicki driving a superb race in 2nd place in the Oxo Sierra, and Tony Longhurst in some danger some laps back of being black flagged. That hasn't happened because of one of the hydraulic jacks hanging beneath the second of the cars, the JPS BMW cars. But he's the one that's really carved up the field, Longhurst. We've seen him in some very tough encounters here with 2 or 3 of the other drivers, Gary Scott for one, Larry Perkins for another. And he's worked hard to climb his way up into 3rd place in the field. But Jim Richards, the race leader at the moment. 18 seconds ahead, Richards, in fact, of Andrew Medicki, and that is a very, very commanding lead.
Well, it's interesting, Jim's now buttoned off quite substantially, back now to a 1:18 lap time, so I mean he's cruising, Dick.
He's obviously cruising. You can do that on canvas, to be quite honest, or in Pirelli's case, steel, which is what the cords are made out of. This is LP coming up the straight. He's obviously been in and had a pit stop and refurbished his car with a few tyres, which makes it an awful lot easier, because it's very difficult driving a car that's got tyres that have gone off, because the car really feels mushy and has absolutely very little response to the steering wheel.
Well, after winning the jump in the race, leading early, then dicing for the lead with Jim Richards for so long, he then, of course, we saw slip back and fell victim to first Andrew Medicki, then Tony Longhurst, and has made a stop for tyres. So he's in 11th position on the racetrack now, Larry Perkins, and is 1 lap down on the leader, in fact.
Well, Wilco, actually, this is the penalty that the Commodores have got to pay, unfortunately, because of the physical weight of the motor vehicle, weighing 1325 kilos. It not only affects the tyres, but it affects the brakes and obviously the performance in a straight line of how the car actually goes. And I don't think the true potential of the Commodore as it is will be realised until it actually gets to Bathurst, where it doesn't suffer from those sort of problems. You know, these shorter circuits play havoc with tyres, especially on a heavy car.
Larry coming up onto the back of his old car that he ran at the James Hardy last year, being driven by Speedway ace Tony Noske. Real speed differential there. Larry coming out of turns a bit quicker.
Actually, Neil, it's pretty interesting to note that. A lot of people seem to think you have an awful lot more horsepower because you can pass a car down the straight, where in actual fact that is not the case in a lot of times. It's the fact that if you get a really good run onto the straight and come onto the straight probably 5 or 7 mile an hour quicker than the other car, you actually attain that speed or keep that speed all the way down the straight. And this is, enables you to pass a guy.
So Perkins will be very disappointed, because yesterday he was under the impression at least that his tyres might have survived. He's using a Dunlop radial tyre, a DO14. He thought it was going to be hard enough to do the job. Actually, I should explain something else too, because I was queried last week. We talk about radial tyres a lot in touring car racing, and perhaps mislead some of our viewers into thinking we're talking about a treaded radial tyre. That's not the case. It's a slick tyre. In fact, the surface of the tyre is slick, but the construction of the tyre case is radial ply rather than cross ply, the more conventional type of tyre. So when we talk radials, it's just new slick tyre technology.
It actually appears as though the radial construction tyres can withstand much more temperature than what the ordinary cross pliers do.
First to second, 17 seconds now between Jim Richards and Andrew Medicki, and 8 seconds separating second and third, Medicki to Longhurst. So Longhurst 25 seconds behind his teammate and race leader Jim Richards. Gary Scott, after being up with the front runners, another of the V8s to fall back through the field. There he is, hard at work on 7's race cam. And there's one notable thing about Gary Scott during the race. He talks to himself, hums to himself, sings to himself, and makes car noises to himself. If we have a close listen, we might in fact hear something.
That's probably because he's got a couple of young kids that like pushes the car around the floor every afternoon.
There's not too much chatter going on there at the moment. He's got his hands full, that's why.
And LP's coming up through the field, about to...
just fight Larry off for a moment here. He's trying to get past. I think he must be on new tyres with the grip he's got.
He sure is.
But he's probably also in consultation with his pit crew as well.
Well, actually, Larry's probably come onto the straight quicker while I go past him down the straight. Because Gary's car looks as though it's actually swivelling on the radiator drain plug at the moment.
Yep, he's got new tyres, I'd say. Or else he's got a bit more grip than me.
I wonder who he's talking to, whether it's us or whether it's the dealer team or whether it's to himself.
He's talking to his pit there, I think, without too much doubt.
There's George Smith, Martin Watt, a couple of the lads out of the Noble Holden dealer team pit.
Well, actually, that's probably pushed Larry up in contention, really, with all the other Commodores anyway. I think it's probably...
One of the things that this does do is it throws the point score into an interesting situation. Jim Richards would extend his 10-point lead, no doubt, over Glenn Seaton.
Yes, Seaton in second place in the series, followed by Larry Perkins and George Fury, with the top two well clear on the point score. Richards with 106 points and Seaton with 96. But Richards is really going to skip right away at the head of the series now, presuming he does hold on to take the checkered flag this afternoon.
So there's a total of 22 seconds covering the first three drivers. 13 seconds separates Richards from Mediki with 4 laps to go, and 9 seconds between Mediki and Longhurst. And the information that I've got is that Gary Scott must be talking to himself, because he's taken his race cam earplugs out, so he's got no means of communication with his pit crew or us. So that's all chat amongst himself.
Talking to himself. well, I suppose it does get lonely out there sometimes, doesn't it, Dick?
I hope he doesn't sleepwalk.
And Jim buttoning off even further to an 18.29. No, update on that, 19.66.
Actually, obviously, Jim is getting to the point where his tyres are starting to give him a bit of bother, but with a 13-second gap to second place Andrew Mediki, I think Jim would have enough up his sleeve to finish the next 3 laps.
Just to give you an idea of exactly who's where in terms of the top 7 at least. Richards is leading, as I just said before, from Mediki, then Tony Longhurst, George Fury in 4th position, Glenn Seaton in 5th position, and then I think the drive of the series so far, considering they haven't been on the trail, from Team Nissan New Zealand, Graham Bowkett in car number 25. He's behind Seaton, so that's been a very good performance.
It certainly has, and they've put an awful lot of time, money and effort into getting the vehicles over here for this weekend, and also for the remaining races in Australia this season anyway.
Well, whatever the problem was with Tony's car, it seems as though it's going to go unchecked and there won't be too many problems. There's the 2 Team New Zealand Nissans. As I mentioned before, they are on the verge of hopefully signing a new major sponsor, with Kent Bogent with the left rear bumper looking a bit second-hand. Not only that, the rear quarter panel and tail light area. And it would be good if they can put together the right kind of deal to keep them over here. They're based now at Calder, as I mentioned earlier in the race, and they'll be hopefully running the rest of the Shell Ultra Touring Car Championship and indeed the endurance races when we get to the Castrol 500, James Hardy 1000 and so on.
It's an interesting thing about these Nissans, I believe, Neil, that next year they'll be basically different cars to what they are this year.
Yeah, they're talking about getting involved with a 6-cylinder car, and depending on the decision made by Howard Marsden, who's now heading up Nissan's International Motorsport Group, they may or may not apply that car to World Championship Group A racing and Australian conditions. The other thing that's happening is that Larry Perkins is getting a little bit closer to these 2 guys, and I presume that he's in contention to take one of their placings away.
My word, he is, and this is obviously the race strategy that Larry has been working out all weekend. He's told everyone else quite different. I can assure you that he has said that he's going to run the entire race, on one set of tyres, but he's come in and had a lightning pit stop, and he's now back on the trail, and obviously about to worry the two New Zealand Nissans with just one lap to go. And I think Jim has really got it home and hosed. He's actually on his final lap right now.
Yeah, final lap and virtually coasting now, Dick. He's got down around the 19-odd second mark in his lap times. In fact, dropped right back down now to a 1:20 lap time. We wouldn't have dreamed that the times would get so slow, and neither he nor Frank Gardner probably thought they could get away with a time like that.
Exactly, but I think Jim really has had a pretty good run. The guy hasn't been troubled. He hasn't been involved in any dices with any single person, so that's allowed him to control the race from the front and look after his tyres, and even slow down at the end of the event to be able to make sure he's got enough rubber to get round to the start-finish line.
So Jim Richards now going through the S's for the final time. It looks like he's going to notch up a well-earned victory. Had one at Lakeside, so Queensland's been good territory for him. A fifth, a second, a first, a fourth and a fifth so far in the series, but he does lead the championship, and as he comes out of Nissan turn for the last time, Jim Richards opens up the taps on the BMW M3 and coasts across the line very easily, the checkered flag being prepared. In fact, he's not even rushing at the line. Jim Richards will do this one very easily indeed. Jim Richards, the winner of round 6 of the Shell Ultra Australian Touring Car Championship, and a very comfortable win indeed. Scoreboard tells